Hello, my friends, and welcome to my channel, The Leadership Analysis. First, I want to explain why I'm doing this podcast and why I'm doing it the way you're seeing and hearing it right now. There's one thing that's very important to me, something I've been thinking about for a long time, and now it's time for me to share my knowledge with you. It's about the impact of leadership, its importance for the individual, for the economy, and even for entire cultures. I will do my best to analyze leadership styles. I will discuss behaviors and the connections between different ways of leading people. I want to give you a space, a perspective to question yourself. On the one hand, the nature and health of your leadership, and on the other hand, the health of the leadership style you experience as an employee. I want to stimulate your thoughts, and maybe my conclusions will help you think about what you and all of us can do to become a better leader or empower people to become one. So what better way to learn than from real-life examples? Let's start with a leadership analysis of Donald Trump. Chapter 1. The Power of Leadership. Leadership is a force that emanates primarily from men and women in positions of power. It shapes our world, for better or for worse. From politics to business, understanding leadership is key to success. Presidents, prime ministers, politicians, and CEOs are responsible for the level of ambiguity and volatility, sometimes causing deep disruptions in economies and cultures. Their decisions affect thousands, if not millions of people. Effective leadership can inspire progress and unite people. Poor leadership can lead to division and stagnation, and in the worst case, collapse. By studying leadership styles, we can learn valuable lessons, and this knowledge is crucial for all of us. But before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. None of my contributions claim to be universally valid. Leadership is complex, and I walk here with Socrates, and I know that I know nothing. This means that there are no simple answers to complex questions. If there are any answers at all, they are perspectives. Chapter 2. A Leader in the Spotlight. Donald Trump's presidency was a time of significant change, and to this day, his charismatic style relies on personal charm and persuasiveness, inspiring his followers through a strong, winning presence. And like many charismatic leaders, he often appeals to emotions to connect with his audience. Trump's approach is highly charismatic, especially with his base. He uses understandable language, repeats key phrases, for example, "Make America Great Again," and appeals to emotions to connect with his supporters. His rallies and his social media presence demonstrate this style as he creates a sense of unity and loyalty among his followers. Here is a critical analysis of Donald Trump's leadership style and the possible consequences of re-election. This assessment addresses both his leadership approach and the expected impact on various areas. However, his leadership style, often unconventional and polarizing, has left its mark. His directness often comes across as impulsive and confrontational, often leading to divisive and inflammatory statements. His lack of restraint can damage diplomatic relations and deepen social division at home, as well as strain alliances and create tensions with international leaders. Trump created an enemy abroad to rally his supporters behind him. Summary. This part of his leadership is primarily a charismatic leadership style, with elements of strong empathy, knowing the needs of his followers and what they want to hear. This leadership style relies on the leader's charm and persuasiveness to inspire and motivate. The advantages are: it is very motivating and boosts morale. It gives the leader strong influence. The disadvantages are dependent on its quality and effectiveness, whether manipulative or empowering. The motivation and morale bring with them a high dependence on the leader, and there may be a lack of structure or sustainability. Chapter 3. Crisis Management. Authoritarian Leadership. Trump is known for his decisive action, particularly in economic policy. During his first term, he implemented tax cuts and deregulation that were welcomed by business and contributed to a short-term boost in economic growth. His decisions in times of crisis are often quick and decisive, which appeals to those who prefer bold leadership. However, Trump's handling of crises, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic, has been widely seen as chaotic, and he has often rejected scientific advice. One reason for this chaos may have been the high turnover in his staff, which destroyed expertise and process knowledge. It appeared that he placed his focus on self-promotion and downplaying risks rather than accountability, and that he disregarded public safety. In times of crisis, his approach risked creating confusion and undermining public confidence in government institutions. When a leader is known for ignoring dissenting opinions and putting loyalty above collaborative input, especially when dealing with complex issues, it creates room for secrecy, covering up mistakes and focusing on flattery rather than finding solutions. Summary: the way he handled crises was primarily authoritarian. He was the man in charge, he made decisions with little input from others, and preferred a top-down approach. He expected obedience and often used direct, commanding communication. The advantages: especially in crises, we need quick decisions. It takes a context-sensitive commitment to one of many possible solutions. This creates clear expectations and motivates people to tackle the problem. The disadvantages: in complex situations, as they occur more and more frequently in our time, we need multi-perspectivity and the willingness to change direction. If everything depends on one person, it often depends on the capacity of that one brain. Creativity and innovation need divergence just as much as convergence. Authoritarianism can lead to low morale because if needs are heard but not implemented, trust crumbles. When decisions are made without the consensus of perspectives, trust is damaged, especially when the decision has resulted in failure. Chapter 4: Free Speech. A Question of Ethics. I believe in freedom of speech, but only if it's honest speech. Donald Trump at the 2018 press conference. This sentence contains a contradiction. He advocates freedom of speech while simultaneously setting a framework within which it can move. Basically, he does exactly what he accuses his opponents of doing. He restricts them. In this case, we can ask ourselves what freedom of speech means. I am convinced that I can say anything, but I have to expect that I will encounter headwinds, which sometimes end in a shitstorm. But back to Donald Trump. His America First policy appeals to those who put national interests ahead of global concerns. He is seen by many as an anti-establishment leader who challenges political norms in pursuit of his core priorities for the country. Trump's handling of ethics often raises concerns about self-interest and conflicts of interest. His policies often place economic gain over ethical considerations such as environmental responsibility or human rights. To many, this approach reflects a lack of global responsibility and a disregard for shared commitments, which could damage the U.S. reputation on the international stage. At a 2020 campaign rally, Donald Trump said, "I told the NATO partners, you're delinquent. You're not paying your bills. I told them if they didn't pay, I was going to leave. And if they hadn't paid, I would have left. But they're paying more now than ever before. Now we're getting delinquent NATO members to pay their fair share." At first glance, this is an understandable statement. If you don't do your work, you don't get paid. The only question is whether we live in a globalized world and can afford to look only at our own country. Let's summarize. Trump's America First rhetoric, his anti-establishment stance, and his appeal to disenfranchised constituencies illustrate a style that resonates with many voters. His use of direct language, his clear attitude of "do what I say or there will be consequences," his aversion to traditional political norms, and his emphasis on representing forgotten Americans fit this approach. So what style is it? As with any leadership behavior, it cannot be 100% attributed to just one style. But the emphasis is clearly on transactional and populist, often demagogic leadership, the so-called populism. Is populism as bad as its reputation? Let's move on to the advantages and disadvantages. Advantages. Populism creates strong emotional connections with followers and fosters a sense of unity and shared purpose. It can quickly mobilize people around common goals, and as always, it can be used for good or for bad. The "you're delinquent, you're not paying your bills, I'm leaving" is a transactional approach. Transactional leadership works with reward and punishment. It provides clear goals and structures and, used correctly, is good for productivity. Disadvantages. Populism can lead to polarization by focusing on us versus them narratives, as I mentioned earlier. Often the focus is on short-term goals, as decisions are driven by public opinion rather than strategic planning. And there is a great danger that complex issues will be oversimplified, which can stand in the way of sustainable solutions. It's easy to blame someone else, but it doesn't solve a single problem. Combined with transactional behavior, it can feel impersonal, create conflict, and stifle creativity because it excludes rather than includes a whole segment of the population. Chapter 5. A Vision to Transform America, a Transformational Leader. Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. Trump, in his 2017 inaugural address, Trump called and is calling for a fresh start, behind which his supporters can rally. Trump sees the need for change and conveys a compelling vision for America. With slogans like, he appeals to national pride and economic growth, thus formulating his goals. His inspiring messages can evoke a sense of belonging and shared destiny among his base. While Trump denies any connection to Project 2025, he does evoke a vision that is not just about political change, but about a comprehensive transformation of American governance, with an emphasis on decentralization and prioritizing individual liberties over federal mandates. His goal is to reduce the federal government's influence in areas such as healthcare, education, and environmental policy. But didn't you tell us that he's more of an authoritarian leader, and isn't centralization a goal of authoritarianism? Yes, but while Trump's vision allows for selective decentralization, where certain federal powers are reduced, the president's ability to control federal policy remains strong. Trump's emphasis on loyalty and control may apply to areas of government directly under his administration, but he may favor an overall smaller federal government that is outside his direct sphere of influence. This approach allows the federal government to exercise considerable power in key areas that Trump prioritizes, such as defense and immigration, while reducing or relinquishing responsibility in areas that he believes are better managed at the state or local level. Trump will change America, which makes him a transformational leader. And while his style is not typically transformational, certain elements do flow in, particularly the way he conveys a compelling vision for America. So America will change under his rule. But is that good or bad? I'll let you decide. However Trump changes America, Trump's approach lacks key transformative elements, particularly in the areas of empowerment and collaboration. True transformational leaders work to empower their followers by empowering them and fostering innovation and teamwork. Trump's focus remains largely on personal authority and loyalty rather than fostering a shared vision. While Trump's leadership style incorporates some elements of transformational leadership, it leans heavily towards centralized power rather than shared empowerment or innovation. He is and remains the man at the top. A strong vision inspires followers, creates a strong sense of unity, and strengthens the workforce. By setting clear emotional goals, it creates meaning and provides an opportunity to be better. While followers feel inspired, they don't necessarily feel empowered to contribute their own ideas or innovations. Chapter 6. America First. Egocentric America? Donald Trump puts his own image of America first and often focuses on personal achievements. His style is characterized by great self-confidence. Quote, "I alone can fix it." 2016 Republican National Convention. Assertiveness and a need for admiration. Coupled with a frequent emphasis on loyalty to his person, this often leads him to present his accomplishments as victories over opponents rather than shared successes. For example, his responses to criticism are often very personal, either dismissing the criticism or questioning the credibility of the source. In an October 2020 Fox News interview, he said of Kamala Harris, "People don't like her. Nobody likes her. Nobody ever has. She could never get above 15% in the polls." Trump's style is also geared toward his personal brand. He has built a following that admires his self-confidence and assertiveness, which can be empowering to his followers. This leadership style may appeal to followers who value strength and certainty, but it runs the risk of alienating those who seek shared goals or collaborative endeavors. Let's summarize. Many have observed narcissistic traits in Trump's leadership style. Narcissistic leaders tend to be resistant to criticism and often react defensively or aggressively to those who disagree with them. But they have the ability to have complete confidence in themselves and are very difficult to deter from their goal. Steve Jobs is one of the best examples of successful narcissistic leadership. His self-confidence and assertiveness can be empowering to his followers, who see him as a decisive figure. The focus on one's own image ensures a consistent message, which can simplify decision-making and make him a predictable, stable figure for his base. Narcissistic leaders know no self-doubt and pursue their goal, no matter the cost. Narcissistic traits often lead to defensiveness, which can hinder growth and improvement in response to feedback. By focusing on one's own image and achievements, this leadership style leaves little room for team building or shared responsibility, which can erode trust and alienate potential allies. Chapter 7. The Recap. Now let's come to the end and summarize everything we've learned so far. Donald Trump uses a variety of leadership styles. Of all the leadership styles known to date, the following have stood out to me. Authoritarian leadership. Characteristics. Authoritarian leaders make decisions with little input from others and prefer a top-down approach. They expect obedience and often use direct, commanding communication. Trump's style often aligns with that of an authoritarian leader, as he emphasizes personal control, rapid decision-making, and loyalty from his team. He is known for ignoring dissenting opinions and putting loyalty above collaborative input, especially when dealing with complex issues. Transactional leadership. Characteristics. Transactional leaders focus on a clear system of rewards and punishments, set specific goals, and expect them to be met. This style is often found in business contexts where short-term results are paramount. Trump's background as a businessman aligns with transactional leadership. He tends to focus on measurable outcomes, such as economic indicators, and uses rewards and threats to drive performance. For example, he often emphasizes immediate economic gains and punishes or fires those who challenge him. Charismatic leadership. Characteristics. Charismatic leaders rely on their personal charm and persuasiveness, inspiring their followers through a strong, winning presence. They often appeal to emotions to connect with their audience. Trump's leadership is strongly charismatic, especially with his base. He uses understandable language, repeats key phrases, e.g., "Make America Great Again," and appeals to emotions to connect with his supporters. His rallies and his social media presence demonstrate this style as he creates a sense of unity and loyalty among his followers. Populist leadership. Characteristics. Populist leaders portray themselves as champions of the people against the elites, often using direct language and presenting themselves as outsiders who challenge the status quo. Trump's America First rhetoric, his anti-establishment stance, and his appeal to disenfranchised constituencies illustrate a populist style. His use of direct language, his aversion to traditional political norms, and his emphasis on representing forgotten Americans fit this approach. Transformational leadership, limited aspects. Characteristics. Transformational leaders focus on long-term visions and inspire change by instilling in their followers a shared sense of purpose and commitment to larger goals. While his style is not typically transformational, Trump does employ some elements of it, such as his compelling vision for America and his motivating messages around national pride and economic growth. However, he lacks a strong focus on empowerment or collaborative innovation, which are at the heart of transformational leadership. Narcissistic leadership. Characteristics. Narcissistic leaders put their own image first and often make decisions that enhance their own status. They can be very assertive, resistant to criticism, and focused on personal achievements. Many observers note narcissistic traits in Trump's leadership style. His frequent focus on personal success, his defensiveness to criticism, and his emphasis on loyalty to himself rather than collaboration can be categorized into a narcissistic understanding of leadership. These styles reflect the diversity and complexity of Trump's leadership approach. He primarily embodies authoritarian and populist traits, with elements of charismatic and transactional leadership, resulting in a unique and sometimes polarizing presence in political and public life. Now it's your turn. What makes Trump's leadership style relatable or not relatable to you? How does he deal with public criticism, and what impact does this have on his image? And does his style of authenticity attract you or deter you, and why? And for me, what can I do to improve your experience? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like my content.